This is Half Serious, where we dig into the things that keep us going habits, hobbies, hell, even bad ideas, and the hard crap that nearly breaks us. Because life doesn't pull punches, and somewhere between the chaos and the craft, the dichotomy of life teaches us a lesson. We laugh, we curse, and we keep freaking going. So pour a drink or start your marathon, and let's get into it. In a lot of our episodes, we talk about the hardships, but not so far on the healing mental health side. Alex went through his struggles while working as a psych tech. He brings a whole other light to the topic, and I think listeners would find it advantageous. He comes not only from the academic side, but also being in the thick of it himself. And I learned a lot from him just in this little bit. So I hope you do too. Enjoy.
My brain likes to filter out my country accent, so it's like in my head I don't really sound that southern, but then like
You're a little southern. Little southern.
it's fine.
You're not the worst that I've had on this podcast by far.
No,
or
I
in
listen.
person.
Hey, your one buddy, I could not figure out where the hell he was from. The guy that was from New York. I was like, I thought
yeah.
until he said like he was in New York and then he was in the South, I thought he was from like Louisiana. It sounded like he had some type of French Creole accent. I was like, where the fuck is this guy from? It was like, oh, he's been here long enough that it started to creep in.
He's lived here for like decades, but he still puts on that New York accent thick. It's like some weird mix, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes he lays it on thick. But all right, so Alex.
Yes.
We've been a part of the family since you were like how old?
I met your brother when I was 14 playing paintball. He worked at the field and I met him. So it's, like 20 years. Yeah, 20 plus years. Long time. Old
But
man. I don't think
pretty
he
much
had
one of
any
the
friends
crew.
before me. So
No. And since he doesn't have any friends at all.
I got one
It's a really hard time for him.
I can't say much. I don't have many friends.
Yeah, but I think you also get to the point where you're like quality over quantity.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely. That I do. I have I've always felt like I've had the greatest friends, and I'm an only child, so like for me, friends were always a big deal. That was my social connection. So my friends, especially nowadays, it really is more. It's more like family.
All of my siblings have one friend that always ended up being like more of a sibling, and so you were Forrests. But
welcome to Trauma Bonding 101.
Yeah. We were feral. I don't know why anybody was friends with any of us, honestly.
I mean, it's truly been a gift. You guys are great people. So.
Well, I'm going to put that on something because nobody's said that. So who convinced who to go to the Navy?
He left for the Navy a year before I did. I think maybe he decided he wanted to join the military before I did. But originally I was going to join the Marine Corps, but they had an incredibly strict tattoo policy. And so I had all of these tattoos, and that kept me out of the Marine Corps. I mean, I went through like a year-long waiver process, letters of recommendation, all kinds of crazy stuff. And they were just like, nope. Which honestly, at the end of the day, given how the events untold, it was definitely better that way. I think I would have done fine in the Marine Corps, but I don't think the Marine Corps would have been as good for me as the Navy was. I want to say that it was your brother that went to the recruiter first, and then when he said that, I was like, God, I don't know what the hell I'm doing in my life. I should probably do something like that too. So, because I'd gone to my grandfather was an Apollo engineer, and so I grew up wanting to do engineering. And thinking that was just set in stone, that's what was going to happen. And breezed through high school. I never touched a book, never studied, had a good GPA. But then I got to UT Knoxville, and just the lack of discipline that I had, it was staring in my face. Dropped out, and I think I have one credit on my transfer. I think it's in English. I have an English class on
3 semesters.
Yeah.
One little credit.
That's it. Yeah. And so I just kind of floundered.
You just didn't pay attention to the classes, or you just thought it was a given like high school? Because high school was easy. At least Lincoln County is pretty easy. But
I didn't have, so I was not raised with a whole lot of structure. I didn't know how to buckle down, basically. I didn't understand that the payoff was, I had an instant gratification problem. And it wasn't even just college. It was just life in general. Like I was lost. Like there was no discipline instilled in me.
So that's a big leap to be like, oh, I don't have discipline, and then just be like, let me join the military or the Navy.
I've always been a person of extremes, and so I knew that it would work. I knew that would be effective. I want to contribute to something. And so that's the other part of it. It's like, I know that I'm going to get some discipline, which was that was like 75% of it. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. And I'll come out on the other end of it, uh, more effective, which then that's it did. But for the most part, it was it was just about trying to get my life right and trying to figure out what to do. I always had emotional support growing up, but
Mhm.
I never had advice. And then maybe that's the case for everybody, but me and my brain did not. I didn't figure it out. I needed someone to help me figure it out. So that's what led to the military.
Well, good for you, because I think that's where a lot of people fall off. They're like, "Oh, well, I'll just keep riding this wave until whenever," and then they end up in a bad place. Hats off to you actually taking that step to do it, and then you're committed. I mean, you sign the piece of paper for as much as I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Once
yeah,
you're in, you're fucking stuck.
yeah. Pretty much. I mean, there's ways to get out, but they're not pleasant. They're
So
not
where did
pleasant.
you go when you first signed up?
So I went to boot camp in February.
How was boot camp? I've never actually heard about Navy boot camp
It's
before. Is it a joke or is it
I mean,
like,
so it's just a mind game. It's all indoctrination. The worst part about Navy boot camp is when you decide to go in the middle of February. That was the worst place. Jesus Christ! It's right on the edge of the lake, and so the wind is just constantly blowing right across. But the boot
mm,
camp itself, honestly, it's more of of like realizing one how stubborn other people are and how much like because all they're doing is indoctrinating you to a single mindset to understand that the world doesn't revolve around you and that you need to become a component.
yeah.
You need to become a cog in the wheel kind of thing. No, definitely not anywhere near like the Marine Corps or even the Coast Guard. Coast Guard actually has one of the more difficult basic trainings.
Yeah, I think I only know a couple people went through Coast Guard, so but even
Yeah,
then
yeah, we
Navy, the
we
only one I know is, Fei Joe, but,
well, he has
that was
that's a
totally
whole
different.
different story
Yeah,
for
that was a whole different thing.
him. Which which actually no, when he joined, so now like when I went, they had 800 divisions that were for specifically for what he did, and so those guys they swam every day, like it was rougher. But I think when he went through, it was just like regular boot camp, like I was, and then he probably went to like a training school, and then he would have gone on to his specialized stuff. But for us, it was just boot camp, and my contract was for hospital corpsman, and so I was a corpsman. The Marine Corps does not have its own medical, so the Navy uses corpsman because that was the idea in the back of my mind. I was like, all right, fine, the Marine Corps won't let me in. I'll become a corpsman and then just get attached to the Marines.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was during that process I found out that they had kind of this blending of the worlds that I thought that I was going to do at the time. And that was like, I was going to go to the military, then I was going to get out, and I was going to go to school, become a psychologist. And so I
Mhm.
found out while I was in core school that they had a program it's called behavioral health technician, psych tech, mental health technician, whatever term you want to call it. And so that's when I found out about that program and became more interested in that.
It was easier to apply yourself to that because you're interested in it as opposed to
Oh my god,
college?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it
Mhm.
was it was so much like well, I took that I took the so that's actually kind of like the drinking history. This all kind of like so before I left for the Navy, I'd already started drinking too much. Like I already realized like hey, you don't really drink normally compared to other people. Like it was just like this innate feeling.
What's too much, you know?
So
Like, what would you describe as too much?
I wouldn't necessarily even say that it's a quantity.
Mhm.
It's more of an innate feeling. Like for me, it was the fact that I would drink straight whiskey pretty much every single time, and I would drink it. Like it didn't matter what time of the day. If I wanted to drink, I was going to drink it. I didn't let any type of social
Yeah.
norm keep me from drinking. I wasn't afraid to drink and then go do something. Which looking back, I was absolutely idiotic. At the time, I was just like, whatever, fuck it. I just equated it to that lack of discipline. I just equated it to being young and dumb and not having any direction in life, and I thought that the military, like boot camp and all that, would solve it. Which I didn't really notice anything like through basic or anything. You're just so focused on everything else going on. The biggest catalyst with my drinking is like right. It was in my mind. It all happened like pretty much within the same week. Like I asked for those C school orders to get that psych tech training program, and then within a week or two, the only other person that I've been as close with up until at this point as your brother is my friend Bennett. And I get this phone call, or I get 3 phone calls from 3 different people that don't have anything to do with one another. And so I just knew it. I knew he was dead. He was gone. And I knew that he had killed himself because like that was he and I had many conversations about suicide and how he had told me many a times that that's the way that he felt. He would talk to me about it, and I'd be like, "Dude, that's dumb." You da 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 da, and
Yeah.
it would kind of move on. And he killed himself, he shot himself. So from that point on, that's when things really took a downward spiral as far as drinking goes.
Why do you think that affected you that way to lean on drink? Just because you didn't wanna cope with it in general or,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
knowing
because like, so for me, growing up, which and it honestly it took like at the time, I didn't really know. I was just like, I knew that I felt bad, and I knew that I didn't wanna feel the way that I felt. So for me, drinking was not complex, but multifaceted. So, like, growing up, I remember from a very young age, like, as long as I can really remember, 6, 7, however, I just I've never felt okay. I never felt like I belonged. I never felt like I was comfortable in my own skin. I always felt weird. I always felt like something just innately was wrong with me and caused all kinds of social issues, not fitting in with other people because I never wanted to talk about what other people wanted to talk about. And then I was an only child, so that made me really weird. Just this compounding factors. By the time I didn't drink through high school, I didn't start drinking until I was 21.
oh, wow, that's unusual.
Yeah, right? But it was like in my head, I was like, "No, it's I don't really need that. That's whatever. It's like people get in trouble, people die, all these other things." So I was just like, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna risk it." But that was the other kind of indicator to me that I did have a problem with alcohol was it was like from the moment I started drinking daily within like 6 months. And then, not just like a beer or two. I didn't know when to stop. I stopped when I passed out, fell asleep. You know, like blackout or
Yeah.
anything like that, but just get tired, go to bed,
No,
go to sleep or
you
whatever.
never blacked out?
There's definitely some times my memory got fuzzy. I would always just get so sleepy and tired. I was trying to drink to fill a void. When I drank, I didn't feel all those feelings of insecurity. When I drank,
Yeah.
I felt like I was comfortable in my own skin.
Mhm.
But then when Bennett died, that's when it started to transfer. You're coping because something's wrong with you. When there was
Mm.
this, I wouldn't necessarily call it a shame aspect brought into it, but definitely no, you deserve to feel this way. You deserve to feel bad because like that was what was kind of messed up about it in my head. It would help me feel better, but it was also making me feel worse because part of the problem I was experiencing was I should feel worse about this. I shouldn't be
Yeah.
happy right now. I shouldn't feel anything good right now. And so it would kind of help with that dichotomy in my head of wanting to feel good in the end, especially looking back at this. That was the insanity of my relationship with alcohol, is that it was just so none of it made sense, but just kept doing it anyway.
Mm.
When he died, that's when I started like drinking because I wanted to feel good or drinking because I wanted to feel bad. One just kind of, as long as I didn't feel like me, I was okay
Mhm.
with it.
Yeah. How old you say you were when he died?
I was 23, so I'd only been drinking
Oh,
for 2
okay.
years at that point in time. And So where I was going with all of that was we were talking about, you were asking because if I was interested in it, did it make
Yeah.
the C school easier? I spent all of that time like basically like trying to self-diagnose. What's your problem, dude? What's your problem? How do you fix yourself? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, but also like I mean, I was drinking the entire time. Like I would drink every night. I don't recall ever studying for anything. I ended up
Wow.
graduating as the honor grad. To me, it was like my own little inside joke. It's like, damn, I was drunk the whole time, guys.
Yeah.
It's like, it just seemed messed up, you know?
Did your, buddies, there, were they like, "Hey, man, you smell like alcohol all the time."
One time, it was after we were done with training and we were just waiting to graduate. And we were
Mhm.
working in a storage room because, like, Fort Sam has, like, it's a medical training campus. So, like, there's medical equipment for all kinds of different things everywhere. We were all working in this room. And one of the guys was just like, fuck. All I can smell is whiskey. And like, dude, like I almost had a panic attack. Was like I was terrified because I was like I was finally doing good at something. I was finally
Mhm.
uh, achieving some success and what I felt was direction um, with life, whatever. All the while still feeling crazy or whatever. But at the same time, I was terrified that if I ever spoke up or said anything, that it would all just be taken away from me. I wouldn't be able to continue down that path. They kicked me out of the Navy. But when he said that, I about had a panic attack, and I told him, it's me. I'm gonna leave. They could tell that it had affected me. Um,
Yeah.
and then
I'm
like
surprised. I mean, not just because that nobody else said, because you spend that many hours with a group of people and especially in different spaces. Even in swimming, we could tell somebody had a problem. "Well, you might need to chill out on the drinking because the air circulation is not that good in this building," and we could tell.
yeah,
So
I don't know
I'm
what it
surprised
was.
more people didn't come forward.
I am too. Like, I don't know what it was. Maybe well, because I mean, like when I like later on, like down the road when I ended up going to rehab, like it shocked everybody. No one had a clue. No one had an idea that I'd ever had a problem with it. Even the people that had gone out drinking with me, didn't really think that. I guess I was just that good at hiding it. I think that's what it was. Is for once, I actually felt comfortable. It was easy for me to hide
Yeah.
it and just to be okay while I was drinking, at least. And then otherwise, I've always been a hard worker. If I enjoyed whatever I was doing, I would work hard at it. I enjoyed what I did. And that's the thing with a lot of alcoholics and addicts is we are actually very efficient and overachievers, hard workers, et cetera, et cetera. We're the go getters. There's a lot of like science and speculation and like neurodivergence type of stuff. Like a lot of people with ADHD end up being alcoholics and addicts. A lot of people that are
Hmm.
addicts or alcoholics or have ADHD or anxiety disorders. So it's like self medication. So
Just to settle it out, or
yeah, well, and
hmm.
specifically with ADHD, it's a problem with dopamine. You don't process dopamine like everybody else. People with ADHD develop issues with all kinds of different types of addiction because of that, because it's giving them dopamine. So we become focused on it. We can focus on it because we enjoy it or whatever, or we're required to make money, etc. So, like when they found out that I had a problem drinking, the people that did find out, they were all kind of shocked because like I was a shift leader.
When how old were you when you started actually practicing being the psych tech?
So he died in August of 2013. I
Uh,
started C school in September.
how did you mourn his death, like in the regular sense of mourning? Did you go to the funeral
Well,
and you're
so
like,
that was the
okay,
other
that's it,
kind
I'm
of
done?
fucked up part about it was is like so his family called me and they wanted me to be a pallbearer and I was like, yeah, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. Let me talk to but my chain of command would not let me leave. Like I was not allowed to go to the funeral. They wouldn't let me. Yeah,
Really?
they wouldn't let me take leave to come to the funeral. So that kind of like messed with me. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So that's how that all went down. So no, like I came home. So he died a week later. I graduated from core school, which we just shortened it to core school. It was within 2 or 3 weeks that I was able to come home, visit his grave. It was enough time to where I went with his family to help him clean out the apartment. And get all of his stuff organized and stuff like that. They hadn't been there yet, and so we and
Is that where he
yeah,
committed suicide?
yes, yeah, he died by
Ooh.
suicide right in his apartment. Yeah, our other buddy Joseph is the one that found him.
How was that for you going in there? I mean, I've seen enough of those scenes when, I go to them, but I always wonder families after the fact, like
Whoever cleaned it
going
up
in
did
those
an
places.
amazing job. There was nothing. There was the bullet hole in the wall. Like I can still see that.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the only like
Well, good.
evidence of it. Yeah, yeah. I remember his sister looked at it and we saw it at the same time. She's like, "Well, I guess I wasn't there before." She messed up sense of humor type of
Gallows
thing.
humor.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, oh yeah. You've talked about that in your
Yep.
other podcasts. And like it's like you develop a very similar one working in mental health because everything you deal with is everybody else's trauma. Like so it's always just
Mm,
doom and
yeah.
gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, fucked up shit, fucked up shit. So like, you're not experiencing it, but that's all you hear about all day. You develop a pretty messed up sense of humor. Patients that come in that like are allergic to peanuts, so they try to kill themselves by eating Snickers bars and stuff like that.
So there's worse ways to go. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm
But
and
just weird stuff. But
have a kind of a harsh question, but
yeah, no,
because I
it's
wonder this from my own friends and stuff that have done the same.
yeah,
I've asked myself this question. When you go back and you hear the things that they've said, and I know some of my friends have said key things, and it's like, what could you have done or what guilt did you have knowing that you didn't stop it? I mean, because we all know at the end of the day, especially you in your profession, you knew like there's nothing you can do. You can't stop somebody from doing it. But
absolutely.
you're gonna about it.
Well, especially given that he and I had that conversation. I had a lot of
Mhm.
anger towards him because I was like, "Dude, why didn't you call me? You've called me almost every other time. We've hung out almost every other time something like this had happened. Why didn't you call me?" There was that. There was a measure of acceptance, like in the sense of like we were just saying, like I knew then too. The reality of it was, he had made his mind up. There was nothing that I could have done short of be there to,
Yeah.
beat him up or some shit. Take the weapon
Yeah.
away from him.
And then you could only stop at that instance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's not. Unfortunately, that the only thing that can be done for those types of things is made apparent that you are that person that they can come to. Beyond that point, so there's a psychologist named Thomas Joyner. I actually got to see him talk while I was at the hospital, and he's done a lot of research on suicide. And I believe he said, and don't entirely quote me on this, but if I'm not
I'm going to quote you.
yeah, right,
Exactly.
yeah, now he's gonna sue me. You've got someone who is suicide that's why they have such a big conversation on access is because the average time between someone having the thought and actually taking their own lives is 15 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's why there's such a big thing on taking weapons out of the home, watching people, things of that nature is because it's an impulsive decision, and so it's just like, "Fuck it, I'm done with this, I'm over it." It's just it's just what like you were saying earlier, if you stopped them this time, it might be the next time. And I mean, that's just I don't know what the answer to that is. I think the only answer to that it's gotten a lot better because I feel like a lot more people are more willing to be open about it. My alcoholism, I was
Yeah.
suicidal there towards the end. Like I had thoughts like almost every day about killing myself. Um, actually like played around with it. It wasn't loaded, but I did have a gun in my hand. And it was just like, just thought. It wasn't so much that I just wanted it to be over. It wasn't so much that
Yeah.
I wanted to die. I just didn't want to be there anymore. I didn't want to feel that way anymore.
Do
So
you think that's the case for most?
I think
That
that
it's situational?
I don't think there's anything personal about that decision. I don't think there's anything personal about, I'm sure there's people that have had that thought like right before they died, like just like this will show them or whatever. I'm sure there is some of that, like a cry for help kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I think it's mostly just about not wanting to feel that way anymore. I think it's about not wanting to suffer anymore. Not
Yeah.
I worked for a provider once, and he was not so much worried about, like we would always have to do these assessments, having thoughts of harming yourself, thoughts of harming others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you'd have like junior psychologists and they would have these knee jerk reactions to a yes on any of those things. And it's like, if you said yes to those, they were going to send you straight to the fifth floor and straight to the psych ward, which is
Mhm.
not the best practice in my opinion. I
Yeah.
think that should be reserved for extreme cases because I've seen situations where I really feel like a stay on the inpatient ward made things worse. Whereas
Oh,
a
yeah.
person before they were trying to get help, now they just feel like they're crazy. Like they
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like they got the help they needed. They feel like they were pawned off on an institution kind of thing.
Yeah, and it keeps people from saying stuff because I know on a law enforcement stand, it's like, if you say certain things, they're worried you'll get shipped off and then your career will be hurt and all this other good stuff, which will then put fuel to the fire of actually committing the act.
That's and so it's that hopelessness is once it creeps in and people don't have that anymore, that's when there's concern. That's when it's like, okay, this situation
Yeah.
needs to be taken seriously. That's why I was so happy to hear about the way you're doing this podcast is because like people just need to talk about it. It just needs to be verbalized and normalized in the sense that like, hey, you're not messed up. Just something messed up happened around you or happened to you. We just need to figure out a way to help you cope with this better. And so I think the first barrier to that is, almost a cliche now, but ending the stigma because it is
Yeah.
true. Because I mean the military treats it the exact same way. The only exception is the special warfare community. They seem to treat it a little bit differently because we would have guys from the teams SEAL teams, either come inpatient psych or come like eventually what I ended up doing was running a program for uh, combat and operational stress. I had anywhere from most of my patients were either E6 to E9 or O3s and O4s that would come through my program for a week, and it's kind of like this crash course on post traumatic stress and how to coping strategies and things like that.
So what was surprising about that coping with post traumatic stress? Like, what's something that you would tell them or uh, found in your school studies that surprised you, like, coping with it?
So one of the first distinctions I like to make is I never say post-traumatic stress disorder
Hmm.
because I don't. I'm a firm believer in the fact that it is not a disorder. If these people saw these things and these things happened to these people and they didn't get fucked up, that would be a disorder. To me, that it would be indicative of something being wrong with a person. You watch people die, or you have to take a life, or an accident happens, or someone assaults you that's going to be traumatic and that's going to mess you up. And it's that acceptance that's okay. Not that what happened to you is okay, but that it's okay that you're messed up from that happening. I always talk about trauma with there's trauma with a capital T and there's trauma with a little t.
What's the difference?
To me, any mental health issue whatsoever is trauma.
Hmm.
It's a response to your environment. It's a response to
Hmm.
either the way you're raised, something happened, whatever. So, like you look at depression and anxiety, That's all due to some circumstance in your life that your brain did not know how to cope with, and it developed its own mechanisms to cope with it. But then there's the type of trauma, what they call like that shattered worldview. Like you go into a situation thinking that the world operates this way, that everybody's safe, that everybody's fine, that you have some measure of
Hmm.
control over the way the world works. And then something happens. You either have to take a life, you watch someone take a life, someone assaults you, whatever it is. But from that point forward, the world is not the same. The world is shattered. It does not operate at all the way that you thought. Like there's almost like the stages of grief. Like it fucks everything up. That's what causes post traumatic stress. Now the brain has to learn how to compensate for all of that. And it does that by being overzealous, keyed up all the time, like constantly on
Hmm.
guard. Where I was going was going into this class, like these people had absolutely zero reason to listen to me. What does this guy know
Hmm.
about anything? So that was
That was
that was
gonna be
like,
my question, because if they're coming in there, I'd be like, "Who the fuck are you?"
yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
And
I mean, yeah.
they're all like E6, E7s, E9 sometimes, and they had Navy, Army, Air Force, and Marines all that would come through my class. And so all those different branches fulfill different roles. So sometimes it was operational stress. I would have them for those first 3 days. And it was really fun to watch them. Like they would say, all right, this guy's not an idiot. He kind of knows what he's talking. Because the only way I knew how to get through to them was to relate with my own experience. So I wouldn't overshare because at that
Mhm.
point in time I was a little over a year sober. I'm not. They're not there to be my therapist. I'm there to help them.
Mhm.
But I would explain I would express things in terms of like to where it was understood that I knew how anxiety worked, how I knew how depression worked, how I knew coping with things unhealthily worked, etc. And so over that time, they would start opening up a little bit. And I'm not saying this to like it's like toot my own horn, but it was more of a process because like then Wednesday would come and I had my buddy Ron. Ron was an EOD technician with the Navy, and so for the Navy, that falls under special warfare. And he had been with the same unit Fagio was with for 15 years. You know, top tip of the spear, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And he had been blown up, I don't know, 5, 6 times. I think he had non-combat deployments between Afghanistan and Iraq. You weren't going to fuck with this guy. There was nothing that like not even these guys that had seen shit were going to be like, no, I'm not. I'm going to die. I'm going to look at that guy like he's an idiot. He was one of those people that he
Yeah.
walked in the room and he commanded respect. That was just the persona. That was just the vibe that he
Mhm.
put off. And he would go in there and he would just open up and he would just tell him his story. Tell him I had to come get him from the beach one night because he had his gun in his hand, just raw, and tell them how much he had struggled. And it was just the very next day, you just see people just like, shit, I'm not a little bitch for
Damn.
feeling this way, Like if
Yeah.
this guy can feel that way, I can feel that way. I've had this through our texts and whatnot and talked to you about, why I thought it was great that you were doing this. And that some of it was, cop shop type stuff is because I think that's what is the most beneficial is to this awareness and understanding that you're not alone and that someone else has been through it. Sometimes people go through worse shit. You can't really compare traumas. You can't. It's not sure some stuff is worse than other shit.
Mhm.
That's just part of it. But like you know, making that comparison is only going to alienate people. So you have to come together on that commonality. And so it's like hearing people just openly share about it. And sometimes it is helpful if that other person's like been doing it for like 30 years and damn, it's messed
Mhm.
up, but they're still
Yeah.
there. So I think that's probably it had nothing to do with me. Because I think that
It had something to do with you. You
well,
facilitated that
and so
relationship.
like my role, yeah, exactly, and that's what we called our role in that. We weren't a group leader or anything like that. We were called co-facilitators because
Yeah.
that was the way we ran that program. I ran that group was like I guided it. They did all the talking, they did all the sharing, they did all the
Mhm.
legwork. I just nudged things in one direction or the other so that they could come together as a group. And so like the day after Ron would leave, it was like they were already starting to kind of huddle together. Thursday morning they came in and they were smiling. That was the coolest fucking experience. That's what I tell people all the time. Like I didn't have people ask me what I did in the military, and like I tell them the Navy, and they say, "Oh, you're on shift, you all this," and I tell them, of course, like, "Oh, are you Marines?" Like, no, like my There was nothing like spectacular about my service, but I don't think that it got any more rewarding. There's never been a more rewarding experience than what I got to see because I got to see that. It was like a light bulb going off in their head.
And I think you're some speech I used to give my squads anyways back in the day, or especially after a hard day. I'm always like, you never know, those lives that you saved. You only know the lives that you didn't,
Right.
because you don't know what you prevented. And I think that was your role too. You don't know what lives you saved or who you prevented from making that gun start looking like a lollipop.
Right.
So you'll never know that part of it.
I up until other than being a dad, that's probably one of the greatest things I've ever done. Was to be able to participate in that, to just play that small part, watching that shift.
Hmm.
That to me, that what is the most helpful for that is to hear people talk about it, to hear people, normalize it. To basically you're not alone and it's okay. You know, those success stories are awesome to see. So yeah, I was going to change the subject without warning. I'll have half a conversation in my head, but not actually have it out loud.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Sometimes I do that. I have my own narrative going on and I forget other people can't hear it.
yeah, exactly. I can't remember what you said earlier, but something triggered the thought. I think there's this great emphasis, or there has been since, uh, with our veterans and post traumatic stress and things of this nature. But I don't think that there has been enough of a spotlight put on your guys' community because you can't go, you can't compare traumas, but you can to a certain extent. It's like the veteran community and combat deployments and things of that nature. It's like, you're going over to a whole different world.
Hmm.
People are getting turned into pink mist, like all kinds of crazy shit's happening. And so obviously there's this trauma. But, like, I feel like
Yeah.
for you guys and your community, it's maybe you don't see people turn into pink mist. I can only imagine that the trauma has gotta be there at an equally or greater extent because it's every day. There's not as much of a reprieve. These guys go over there for 6 to 9 months, and then they come home. For you guys, it's like 20, 30 years of, 5, 6 days a week, and so, to me, I don't know how there's not an issue there. Is there this acknowledgement of that in the community? Or,
Mhm.
um what is that from your perspective?
They're trying. Before we left out, a good buddy of mine and some others formed up a really good peer support team. And so they do all this stuff, but really it's just up to whatever the chief decides to do. So, okay, we're going to support you guys and this person needing to go to rehab. But then maybe person B they don't like, so they decide not to. And I'll say I tried therapy when I was going through some stuff like 3 or 4 times. I could never find one because the first one hated cops, the second one hated cops, the third one was writing a book or something, and she kept asking about certain stories that she wanted to put in her book about different events that had to do with past
So it
cases, which
wasn't
was
about
fucking
therapy, it
impressive.
was an interview.
I can't remember the fourth one because that was when I was heading up the peer support stuff. So I was like, okay, I should really try this, but
Sure.
I didn't find any. So we tried to get a list of people, but our list was small out of like all these people that I'd called and we had researched. So it was maybe, I think we had a list of 3. And I get it. I mean, nobody wants to get pulled over. Nobody wants to deal with cops, but it's hard because a Marine buddy of mine that became, PD, I think it was a Marine, but he did some good shit in the Marines before he became, police, and he ended up not staying, but because he was dealing with some shit. He said the hardest thing for him in policing and the difference between the two was that he'll have flashbacks and thinks there's some explosive in the street, but he knows it's from some other country. Whereas
Right.
here, he goes right corner, he's like, well, that actually did happen there, so that could very well happen there again,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, I
But
wasn't.
no, we suck at it. Is the long
Yeah,
story. We
that's what
suck at
kinda
it.
what I was hearing. Yeah, well, like, I mean, because one, I can only imagine it's like, because it is such a day-to-day thing, but, like I was saying earlier, like, in the military, the special warfare community handles it a little better because they're very tight-knit. They're very, you
Well, I
know
think you guys invest in your people, just like your stories, right? You invested in them, and then they got to
well,
be
and
functional humans again.
that is like so with special warfare community, there seems to be some of that. Yeah, okay, alright.
Yeah,
Yes.
break it down.
Yeah, so the trauma. So, you hear a lot of arguments about post-traumatic stress and all this stuff like, "Oh, why didn't happen?" So World War II, there was a processing that was able to be done. So after World War II, you had all these guys going over there seeing all the horrors of World War II, and then, when I say World War II, I mean basically mean from World War II and before, like, Civil War, go back to the ancient Romans, whatever. And World War II is just the easiest example because they all came back on boats and they were all able to process and gallows humor or cry or whatever they needed to do on that ship
Mhm.
all the way back for however long it took. I don't know how long it took, weeks. And so they were able to do that. They were able to have this process. And then not only that, but meanwhile, everybody back home was contributing to the war effort. I mean, like everybody was doing something involved. So
Mhm.
there was this cohesion between the traumatized and civilian society. But moving forward, that stopped happening less and less. Like there was this it was like this process of war becoming detached from society. Whereas before World War II, you were usually like one step away from someone who was affected by that war in some capacity. But as we've moved
Mm.
more in society, it becomes it's further and further. Oh, that's what happens over there. That has compounded this issue. And you went from a 3 week journey to a flight, Korea and Vietnam. You were home within a week. Now, guys roll off the plane, they leave a combat zone, and they're home within a matter of 2 days. There is no time to reprocess. There is no time to discuss what has happened. And that's why I was bringing that up earlier about law enforcement. There's even less because it's like it never stops.
Yeah,
It
'cause
just keeps
they're
happening. And then on top of that, there's this rift between civilian society and the people fighting the wars. There's this huge rift. Even me working in a hospital, coming back into civilian life, there was this huge adjustment. It was like this traumatic experience for me, but it was still like, whoa, things are different here. This does not at
Mhm.
all work like the military.
Yeah, yeah,
So I can only imagine the frustrations that would cause for someone who had been in war. There's no time to take that understanding. Sebastian
yeah,
Younger, he was he actually, I think got most of his fame from, he wrote the book Perfect Storm, and then they did the movie and stuff like that. But he was also a combat journalist, and he wrote another book called Tribe. And I think that if I were going to give anybody that had any type of trauma from combat or even law enforcement a suggestion on a book to read, because he goes into it and he talks about the things like I was just talking about from this perspective of trauma and post traumatic stress is such a big issue now when it wasn't as big of an issue pre 1940s because there was a greater understanding. Because he goes in and he talks about how Native Americans had specific rituals for the people they were sending off to war. Basically, recognizing you are not going to be the same from this point forward. And when you
yeah,
come back, we will be here. The majority of those warriors had done that themselves. He kind of goes into some of like what he thinks are some of the solutions. Because like, no, he wasn't, a combatant, but he volunteered to go into war so that he could be able to tell the story for the people that didn't know how to. He went in with a camera and no gun, nothing to protect himself with whatsoever.
damn.
Yeah, yeah, and he went to the where Restrepo was the Korengal Valley. So if you talk to the Marines and they talk about Hellman Province, if you tell them you were in Hellman Province, they're like, oh fuck, Well, if you talk to the
Yeah,
guys in the Army, they say, oh yeah, I was in the Korengal Valley. It's like, oh fuck, you don't even have to say anything else, and they know like shit was fucked up.
yeah,
And so, but so he wrote his, and then he did all other things. He basically most of his books are focused on that concept of telling it from their perspective and trying to get the masses to understand that and relate to that. But I don't think that law enforcement, but from my perspective, nobody's really done that. Nobody's really talking about that. And maybe there are. Maybe I'm just not
mhm,
as keyed in. Since I left the Navy, my life
yeah,
has been, my mental health efforts have been more in my own sobriety and working a program and things of that nature have been less about, the professional side of it. And so that all is just kind of like compounding to this issue that I feel like has to kind of be somewhere in the surface for you
yeah,
guys.
and I don't
But
know how to solve it. And there's some people that have really made some headway, but every department's different, and so
no protocol, no
there's no answer for all of
standardization.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. I wish there was.
Oh,
No, because they pay how much for training for these people, and you'd think that they would invest in them a little bit. I know that any of the, certain special units and stuff, they invest a lot more money
yeah.
into them in training. But still, I mean, how much does an average soldier
I
cost
want to
probably to go through
say
training?
they would tell you that kind of thing when I was in. I want to say like even for us like corpsmen, like they were saying by the time you got done with corps school, you were worth $1 million. Like there was like
Yeah.
$1 million worth of training invested in you.
Well,
Like,
that's
and
disappointing.
yeah, it is. And I'm not trying to suggest because the counter argument to this is like,
Touchy-feely.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And resilience is absolutely paramount. There is a time
Mhm.
and a place to process these things and to talk about these
Yep.
things. And if you can't keep it together long enough to not talk about that shit and still do your job, then that's a problem. So I
Mhm.
get that, but it's also not a sign of weakness to have moments of vulnerability and being willing to talk about that or being willing
Mhm.
to say, "Hey, I need help with that." It's not one or the other, It's a combination of between because I hear that, It's like especially in you guys' line of
Yeah.
work. I mean, like you can't. you can't afford.
You gotta get done with the mission or,
Yeah,
whatever it is, mission call.
yeah, and so I get that. So I'm not trying to say like, "Oh, you guys all need to, you know, start."
Sit in a circle.
Yeah, and sing Kumbaya and, like, all this other shit. No, I get there's gotta be that, uh, there's gotta be a heavy, heavy dose of a hard ass involved. I get that. For any of the listeners, I don't want you to think like I'm thinking that, like, all the cops need to become, woo woo and all this
I
other
don't
shit. Like, no,
don't think that's what you're portraying,
yeah,
so I think you're okay.
yeah. It's just more of like, it just needs to not be a big deal.
Go handle your shit, and now go handle this shit, just
Yeah,
like you would anything else. Like,
yeah,
it's maintenance, just like we go to the gym.
yeah,
Why are you
right.
saying, "Mhm,"
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
"I
yeah.
need to
Go
go to
there.
the gym,"
Yeah, I
okay?
do though. Like, man, I need to get back into running. Running was one of the best things I ever did for my mental health, and
Yeah, I agree.
I did it for a long time, and then I got really busy finishing up my bachelor's, and I never got back
Got
into
back.
it the way I was before that.
Not to go back, but I did wanna ask you well, there's 2 other things I wanted to ask you, but one of them I've asked a couple of guests because 'cause I'm always kinda curious because, like, you talked about it in a more scientific way, but there's a podcast coming out next where I talk about knocking the shine off the rookies. You can tell when something has changed in them
Yeah,
because knock the shine off or
yeah.
whatever. So, is there a time that you realized that in yourself, something happened that kinda changed who you were? I feel like you can literally feel it sometimes. You're like, "Oh, something's changed, it's different."
Yes,
Is there
yeah.
a time in your life where it has flipped that switch?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky enough to have a couple of times that that's happened. One was in boot camp, like, just like a one it was this shift. W One of the first things your brother told me after he came back, he's like, "Look, you're gonna get in the Navy, you're gonna get out there, and you're gonna be exposed to all these different people, and you're gonna realize just how dumb some people are." And that was that. It's like,
Um,
"Oh, shit, he was right. These Some of these people are just
mhm.
that dumb," you
Yeah,
know?
like, you don't eat the polish you put on your
Yeah,
boots.
yeah,
Stop.
yeah, exactly. But then also, since I've been able to travel other than places in Alabama or Tennessee, or I've been, actually, I did more traveling before the Navy than while I was in the Navy. So I've been in different countries, different parts of the states or whatever. But when you start spending time with people from those places as opposed to just visiting them, and
Mhm,
understanding their perspectives on the world and how it works. That was kind of one of those moments of like the world is different. But I think the biggest one though was when I got sober. I distinctly remember this. So up until I got sober, it wasn't so much that I felt alone. I just felt crazy. I felt there was something wrong with me. I didn't know what it was going to take to figure it out.
mhm,
And I didn't know what was wrong with me because I couldn't find anything through all of my experience thus far because I'd only worked at inpatient so far. Just nothing was conclusive. Like I couldn't figure out what the hell my problem was. I'd love to say that it was this thing where I just finally was like, no, I would like to have some help, please.
Why did you turn British?
Yeah, I don't know. Just
Is it
yeah.
proper when you ask for help?
Can I have
Sir.
some more help, please? But yeah, that's not at all what had happened. I made some stupid choices, and what had ended up happening is I was supposed to be at work that night, but I was drunk and I wasn't gonna make it. And so, I just like, called and fessed up. And it was that point, like once the seal was broken off, it was easy to be like, okay, yeah, I need to do something about this. But up until that point, I was terrified to lose my job and lose everything I had been working on because I was good at it. I was doing
Mhm,
great as far as that goes. Like personal life was going great. It was my personal life that I was
yeah.
messing up with my wife at the time, and we had my son. My son had been born in November, and then by January I was in rehab. It wasn't some noble thing of like, oh they're sure it was a catalyst. It's like, oh my son, I need to get my shit together for my son. Sure, that was a catalyst, but
Yeah.
the kickoff to all that was I was about to get in trouble. They could have NJP'd me for that non-judicial punishment for not showing up too late or being drunk when I was supposed to be at work, etc.
Did you have a mentor that kinda helped you through it, or is it just the process in general?
I had good leadership. My leading petty officer was actually one of my instructors at school, and then my chief at the time, she was a fucking hard ass, but she was that kind that like she cared about you.
Yeah.
And so she just made sure I got the help that I needed. But during that process, go to rehab, and they gave me the choice because I had a son that had just been born if I wanted to do outpatient. But like I said before, if I wanted to do intensive outpatient for 35 days of intensive outpatient treatment, or if I wanted to go straight inpatient.
Mhm.
And like I said before, I've always been a person of extremes, and I knew that if I gave myself the slack, I wouldn't commit to it. So I was like, "No, I need to go inpatient, and I need to have this option taken away from me."
Yeah.
And so we go in, go to a meeting, a 12-step meeting, and it's down in this basement in a church in Norfolk, and it's a candlelight meeting. So they got all these candles fucking lit, and you're sitting, it's like this big giant circle. And like, I'm used to running group therapy, but this feels like a fucking cult. And so I'm like, all right, what is this? What, like they talk about
Yeah.
boot camp, like you have that aha moment in the first 3 days of like, what have I
Yeah.
gotten myself into? That's kinda how I felt about this situation. I was like, "What are we doing?" Like, because I was feeling optimistic, "Is this gonna work?" I kind of had an experience that I talked about later about what Ron was giving to these other people. I was able to have
Mhm.
my own experience that night, and all like, I don't even remember what the hell they talked about at the meeting, but I just remember that they were saying all the things I had been terrified to say and admit to, and to say that I had felt and all these other things,
Mhm.
they were just saying. They were just putting it out there in the open. And I just had this deep sense of like this is the answer. I don't know why it's the answer. I don't know what got me to here for this to be the answer, but this is your problem, dude. You're an alcoholic. That's your fucking problem. It was an answer to all the other feelings that I had had. The longer I paid attention, the longer I started to work a program, the more I realized that even before I started drinking, I was trying to fill a void. I was trying to fill a void inside here that there was just no
Mhm.
feeling in conventional means. There was no way to feel it that way. The way for me to feel it the way I'm wired was to work a 12-step program. Like, and that's what works for me. And it was that realization that just kind of clicked for me that like, no, this is just you just need to do it this way, and things just kind of dominoed into place from there. But as far as like another specific moment, I remember like I never knew how to identify any of my feelings. I could help other people with like whatever was going on with them, but all I knew is I was either pissed or I didn't like the way I was feeling. I distinctly remember going to the elevator after I'd gotten out of rehab, and I was going downstairs for something, and just having this thought of, oh, I'm anxious because of this or this. I actually
You
identified
identified it.
something,
Yeah.
and that was, that was kind of like proof of what I had been working on, actually working its way out.
Do you think that that adversity and that helped you in your other job with dealing with alcoholism and all other stuff? Because I know you said that you spoke on it with your groups and
Look,
stuff, but do you think that that helped you?
I think a lot of people have a lot more hard time with it, and that I had a very easy time with recovery because of the fact that I worked in mental health.
Mm.
And to me, that's just further evidence how important for the alcoholic or the addict, or for me, it is to put those types of concepts and that whole process into play. Is because like my life was nothing but either if I was off, I was going to meetings. If I was at work, I'm sitting there running group therapy. I'm talking about all this stuff all day, every day, and I'm just I'm putting positivity into other people's lives, and
Mhm.
I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not sitting there because that's one of the biggest things that a lot of 12-step programs talk about. It's like, yeah, I'm not the center of the world, and the more I let go of that concept, the better my recovery will be. And I'm not saying that you can't have success. I don't. I do. I firmly believe that you can have success in recovery without having to be a mental health professional. Absolutely, but it was force fed to me in a way that was good for me. But I feel if I hadn't have had that job, it would have taken a lot more work on my end to like be conscious about this and to make it to meetings, to call people, call a sponsor, call somebody else in recovery, etc. So I think 100% that my success and my recovery one in go hand in hand with having that job in mental health.
So you weren't, I mean, and I don't know if you have relapse or head drinks or anything after the fact, but as far as I know, at least I don't think that you have.
No,
But even if you had, your whole success is
no,
not rare, but I mean, it's not usually there's a few tries and stuff. So it
well,
seems like you done well.
no, I've been sober since. I've been sober. If I make it to January, it'll be 11 years.
Damn.
And, it's definitely the exception to be young and in recovery.
Mhm.
And that's honestly, that's one of, I think one of the most important things anybody said to me when I was getting sober, my grandfather, who had helped my uncle in a similar situation, and, he said, Alex, this is gonna sound crazy, but I'm glad this is happening. I'm glad that you're finding this out now." And at the time, I was kinda like, "What the fuck?"
Fuck you too, buddy.
Yeah, but as time moved on, I that just kept playing in my head. Like, well, I might as well sit here with hear what these people have to say.
And
It's easy to just get wrapped up in life and just to keep going through the motions and banging your head up against the wall because like, surely it'll get better. Surely it'll get better. You know, I'm sure a
mhm.
million people tell themselves that. And then next thing you know, 20 years later, you're still doing the same damn thing. Whereas I got lucky and had the right people in my life to say, hey, no, don't do that. Do this. And that's one of the things I was told is like, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. And that's what I did. You know? Yeah. That's one of the
What
things
does
I
that
say.
even mean?
Well, it's just you shut up and listen, you know?
Oh, okay,
Yeah, shut
alright.
up and listen, you know? As I
Got
sat
it,
here
yeah,
and
that makes
talked for an hour and a half.
that's
But
what this is about. Yes.
yeah, yeah. But no, I just did what I was told for once. Not always the greatest at that. Sure.
What's something you some advice you'd give to somebody that may be in your position that maybe doesn't have the support and stuff that you had then? That has to figure it out on their own, or maybe doesn't even wanna recognize it, you know?
Just give it a shot. Cause it's weird, man. It is. And it's even still now. I'm like, sometimes I'll go and I'm like, "What?" But I keep going back because it works. I mean, it sounds stupid, but it does. It works. It just fucking works. You know, if you give it the shot, that's it. It's like you just no matter how weird it sounds, no matter how hokey it sounds, no matter how woo woo it sounds, whatever label you wanna put on it,
Mhm.
just do it. You know, it's like my first sponsor says, "We'll be glad to give you your misery back." They will come and go, but they always come back if they live. You know, because we've lost I don't know, 4 or 5 people that I got sober with, they're dead, you know, because they didn't give it a shot. They just kept doing the same damn thing. And to me, that's it. It's like just give it a shot and just be willing to listen,
Mhm.
but also remain teachable. I don't care how smart you are or how much life you live. There's always somebody that can teach you something. I don't give a shit who it is. I don't care what it is. But none of that shit matters. You know, like you've got to kill your ego. You've got to kill that motherfucker because like if you aren't willing to be teachable, then so at least in recovery, if I'm not let me not talk about yous, I'm talking about I's. If I don't remain teachable, if I get it in my head that I just know everything and that I don't need to listen to other people for whatever advice about whatever it is, like that's the moment that I start letting that disease start winning again.
Can we I don't remember if you said if we could or not. Can we say where you work now or what you do?
Oh, yeah, I don't mind. Well, I got plugged into that nonprofit, which unfortunately I haven't been able to work with in forever because of school. So the nonprofit was going to allow me to keep doing what I wanted to do for a group of people that I knew that wanted it. Because for me, I didn't want to work in mental health unless I could just do trauma. And so the nonprofit that I was going to work with allowed me to basically just keep doing what I was doing, running that combat and operational stress program, but just on a volunteer basis. And so I was like, okay, let's switch gears, Alex. What do you actually what do you what do you really want to be when you grow up? And so I decided to go back towards engineering and then as I moved forward in school, that became more and more obvious. It was like, no, this is right because I could actually go to school this time. I could actually complete it. I did great.
Yeah.
And I started to thrive in an environment where I was constantly challenged to learn. So it was whenever the last rover landed on Mars, and me and the boys, me and my two gremlins, were watching it all kind of unfold, like you know, etc. And I was like, "What
Yeah.
are you doing, dumbass? Space is in your blood. Your grandpa was an Apollo engineer." And that was just like that was you wanna talk about another moment where something just, like, clicked. It was that.
Mhm.
And so I got towards the end of my degree, and I was able to apply for the Pathways program with NASA. And so now I work for NASA in propulsion testing and getting started my master's.
Awesome. I didn't know you were doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I knew that once I started going back into engineering that I wanted it because that was the original plan out of high school was to do that,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of the direction I took when I decided I wanted to go back to school for engineering.
So you're 18, tried it, failed at it, and then
10,
23, is that when you realized that you had a drinking problem, or was that when you
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
sober?
23 is when
So
I got sober when I was 25. 23
so
is when I kind of
23,
realized that it was a problem, but then I got sober when I was 25.
25, and then you're out and back at engineering at what age?
28.
I mean, that's a hell of a turnaround. Do you realize that's a quick positive uptick? Like
I
that's impressive turnaround.
I guess. I well, I mean I don't like Yeah, just I feel like it was, I know that I did the legwork on it. Like I had to construct the mental processes to like to make it happen. But like
Yeah.
I just had so much support. Like in the Navy, my last chief was kind of a twat waffle, but
Oh, yeah, you gotta have a couple
yeah,
twat
yeah.
waffles,
But other
though.
than that, like my direct leadership was just always amazing and just like nothing but supportive. And then of course, like get out of the Navy, and my family is just like whatever you need to make it happen.
Yeah, but like I told somebody else before, I mean, there's always the choice to quit. So I think I get it. You got to be humble about your stuff and check your ego and all the other stuff. But also, and I know a bunch of people that just decided not to, or their turnaround was like 30 years in the making and they've already done too much damage. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
I'm just
I'm
saying,
definitely.
good job.
Well, thank you,
Take
thank
the
you.
compliment, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm definitely grateful for it. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now. Uh,
Yeah. I think that's everybody's childhood dream at some point to be like, oh, I want to work for NASA. Good job.
it's exciting. I think it was cooler like when I told my boys that that's what I was going to be doing.
I mean, I still see the passion in the mental health side from you, but I don't know if it's from like a retrospect or like just memory of it, and the accomplishments, or if you actually still enjoy the topic of it.
I definitely, without a doubt, it's something that I am compassionate about on a personal level, just because of my own life, the other people that I care about their lives, and then obviously my own personal recovery. I just realized it's not what I wanted to do personal level as opposed to a professional level, and so I wanted to find something professionally that I was as passionate about.
Yeah. Well, is there anything? Because I feel bad because I've kept you on here long, but I kept
Oh
on
no,
coming up with the
okay.
questions too.
All I've got today is studying, so I'm good. Not burnt out. This is awesome that you're doing this. Like, I think. Well, did you mention this when we were at the lake? I feel like you mentioned something about starting to do this. I can't remember the first time I heard
Yeah,
you mention it.
I talked about wanting to do it probably because it's something I've wanted to do because I feel like I don't know if it's the age that we are now or what. I say we, even though I know I'm much older than you,
Oh yeah,
but
much much.
that's so much. But I feel like now there's certain people, at least that I'm surrounded by, that are just willing to share their stories, and that wasn't something I was ever privy to before. I don't feel like, at least amongst friend groups and stuff, and all the shit that everybody went through, we were all very guarded, and then all of a sudden everybody matured and figured out how to work through their own problems, and now they're okay with sharing them, and it's such an important thing to do, like you were talking about. It's so important for a generation that's now okay with it when we were very guarded to start,
Yeah,
to kind of help the next generation, because we kind of screwed the pooch, on that shit for a
right.
long fucking time. So to help kind of make it a little bit better for the next generation.
Well, that's why I was excited about it. Like I said, you talked about it, but then once I started listening, you started talking to me a little bit about it, and then listened to the episodes that you've done, and it became a more. I was more excited for you about it because of a lot of things I kind of talked about. Because I have you know an immense amount of respect for the things that you've done, and the
I
capacity
did
that
shit.
you shut up. Yeah, take the compliment. Is that what you told me? Yeah, and in the capacity that you've done it. So I think that you're in that same kind of position I was talking about, like with Ron. And it's like if you're going to talk about these things, or if you're going to facilitate other people talking about these types of things, I think that can have a very positive impact. Whether that's with the cop shop stuff, or whether it's like with people in general, with our
Hmm.
generation in general, whatever it is. I think that you are one of so me, and I'm sure as I feel like a lot of police officers, you probably develop a sense of people, and just personalities in general. But what I'm
Hmm.
getting at is you have one of those personalities that is a presence of its own, and so you can because it's not. It's, sure, you've got the cop vibe of not in a bad way, not a fucking cop,
Are you calling me a bitch?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that?
yeah. No, we're just like, no nonsense kind of thing. No time for bullshit. This is what we got to do. This is what we need to say, et cetera, et cetera. But then you're approachable at the same time. And I think that those two things in combination will allow for this to be a good platform in that way, to be able to get people to talk about things. It's like, oh, well, she's going to talk about that. I can talk about that. That kind of thing. It's exciting. I'm excited for you. I haven't listened to the most recent episode, but the other ones have they've been great. I think it's people talking about either things that, maybe that they're comfortable talking about, but a lot of people are not. I forget that a lot. Like I can't tell you how many times for me, I'm so comfortable talking about either mental health or suicide or personal shit.
But like in a factual
Yeah,
way,
like
like,
in a
yeah,
factual
da-da.
ownership kind of like, no, this is what happened and this is how I did it. You know, it's like sometimes you do that. People are just like, what is wrong with that guy? Why is he talking about that? He knows that's weird to talk about that. It's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is like, it's easy for me because I've been exposed to that, and I'm around a lot of people that have been exposed to that. But I don't think that that's the case for the majority of society. I think there's still a lot that are very alone, or they feel like
Mhm.
that no one's going to understand, or some version of that. That's keeping them locked inside the madness of their own mind. And it's so if maybe they could start hearing some of these things, hearing people talk about the shit sandwiches that they've had to eat in life and how they swallowed it down, maybe it can make it easier for them, you know? And not to mention it's good,
Yeah.
like this is good for me, it's good for you, it's good for the other people, that come on the podcast. It's like if nothing else, our lives are getting better.
Yeah. Yeah, screw everybody else.
Yeah, fuck off.
I mean, in all seriousness, because I've known like 2 decades or, I mean, maybe at least a decade from when I came back from school and actually started, Forrest would come along for whatever was going on. But still, I didn't know these stories. So this is cool for me because I get to know all your shit from your perspective and what actually happened and all that good stuff. That's why I like this stuff. It's cutting out the bullshit of the conversations.
And no small talk,
Yeah, fucking, I don't mind. Like, I can do it, but God, I hate those.
Yeah, I'd much rather pick at the stuff that actually matters.
Thanks for giving me 2 hours and 11 minutes of your off
Yeah, I guess
time.
so. Thanks for letting me hang out.